นะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะพุทธังธัมมังสังฆังนะมาสามิ In the development of meditation, certain favorable conditions are required. For instance, a suitable place, suitable climate, suitable food, suitable friends. And we're fortunate that we have all of those favorable conditions. Of course, things here, or indeed in any monastery, in any meditation center, don't fit our ideal in every respect. And there are certain things we wish were a little different. Perhaps the way the monastery is, the way the schedule is, the way the weather is, and so on. But overall, I think we can say that we're living in a very conducive environment, and the development of a sense of appreciation and a sense of contentment with the environment is an important foundation or support for meditation practice. Being willing to stop and appreciate just how much we are given, how much we have in our favor. Some of those factors are naturally occurring, but the majority of them in a monastery like this are the results of a great amount of human kindness and effort over a period of 25 years. So from the efforts, the kindness of the lay people who have provided the funds for the building of our dwelling places, for the sala, who paid for the electricity supply, who've paid indeed for everything that we make use of, and who provide our daily needs, provide our daily meal. And remembering this, bringing it to mind, is a duty or responsibility of a monastic or one living in a monastery for a short time, but it is also a way of bringing up your sense of joy, and this energy that we need to develop practice is not one that we can find somewhere external to ourselves, but is one which we can skillfully create by inclining the mind in wise directions, and the recollection of just how much we're offered, and how much we are depending on the barami of the Buddha himself, the barami of all the great monks throughout the last 2,500 years and more particularly the Barami of Lumpur Cha, the Barami of Lumpur Sumeto, who established this monastery, and the various senior monks who put time and effort into creating this situation over the years, particularly of Ajahn Bakro, Ajahn Jakro, Ajahn Pasano. We're deriving benefit from their renunciation, their Dhammadana every day of our practice. So a sense of appreciation, a sense of contentment, and I think of the words of Ajahn Sumedho that he would use very often. Things are good enough. If we start thinking of how we would like them to be in an ideal world, we're already off on the wrong track, but they're good enough. There are certain distractions, and sometimes it's too hot, it's too muggy, there's a lot of noise from the road and so on, but these, I think, if we are frank with ourselves, these are not the major obstacles to our development of samatha and vipassana. The major objects are coming from within our minds much more than from external conditions. Basically, they're good enough. So being content, being of few wishes, being very easy to be easily satisfied, not being very fussy, picky, just being someone who's easy to look after, easy to live with, easily adaptable to situations, structures or lack of structures. The supportive qualities within each individual, each meditator, qualities particularly stressed by the Lord Buddha himself and the great meditation teachers, include very prominently sense restraint. And this is ongoing practice in every posture. The sense restraint is an interesting virtue or practice in that it spans the whole threefold training from sila through samadhi to panya, and there are different levels at which this is taken. At the highest level, the level of the Arya Pukala, then there is the constant recognition of the impermanent, unsatisfactory nature of sense impressions, which is the highest kind of sense restraint, through seeing the nature, the unsatisfying nature of sense stimuli. In our daily life, it means averting our attention from the pleasant, the fascinating, the interesting aspects of the external world, not fighting and forcing the mind so much as turning away, choosing the path of peace to the path of excitement, stimulation, fascination, not attaching to the general aspects or any particular characteristics of forms, sounds, odors, tastes, physical sensations, ideas. The most pithy definition of samadhi is non-distraction. Let me say the essence of samadhi, concentration, and so the enemy or the direct opponent of samadhi is distraction. And so whenever we see the mind rather willfully seeking for some kind of distraction, whether it's in some small sense pleasure or some conversation or something to read or whatever, then we must gently but firmly lead the mind back away from proliferation towards unity or oneness, simplicity of mind. So that this is a point to really stress that distraction, the love of distraction, the seeking for distraction is seriously undermines samadhi practice, and it is something to beware of throughout the day, because there can be quite a lot of effort put in to the meditation practice during the formal structured periods, but any kind of momentum that starts to build up can very easily be dissipated if we just follow that habitual tendency just to relax with distraction, instead of relaxing in a skillful way, one which does not detract from the inward movement of the mind and the inclination towards peace, but we seek a distraction through something just to stir up the mind again, then it's like we're going one step forward and two steps back, as we say. And so there has to be this seamless attitude to practice, restraining the outgoing exuberance of the mind, as it's been called by one teacher, particularly as it's expressed with the desire to indulge in and enjoy the objects of sense. Of the sense objects and the aspects of the sense world, the one which is particularly singled out is food, and in a monastic environment where most of the coarser sensual pleasures are not available, then the thrust towards sensual pleasure tends to be expressed in very simple, basic ways, expressed in desire for sleep, food, conversation, usually. Hence Ajahn Chah's famous maxim, or exhortation to sleep little, eat little, talk little, and practice a lot. He says one who eats a lot, sleeps a lot, talks a lot, is a fool. And the wise person, the sage, is the one who speaks little and eats little, knows moderation in food, and it's with distraction or indulgence in form, sounds, and so on, we can quite easily usually bring the mind back and make a fresh start. But if there is indulgence in food, and particularly if we eat too much, then that heaviness is really disruptive of efforts to meditate, a sense of having let ourselves down. Self-aversion starts to build, frustration with the inability to concentrate, and just a few moments or minutes of indulgence at the mealtime can have a extremely detrimental effect on practice for the whole day, and can lead to a sense of frustration and depression. So the Buddha made great emphasis on
being one who is frugal and being one who knows the right amount in food. Certain cases this might mean using some particular skillful means, like only eating for a certain number of minutes or a certain number of mouthfuls, for instance. The next factor is being one who takes joy in wakefulness, is not seeking the pleasure of sleep and unconsciousness and just turning off and indulging in rest, taking just as much sleep and rest as is needed, and trying to find the optimum amount of rest that you need. If you're in good health and you're meditating, certainly you should not need more than 6 hours of rest in a 24-hour period. Some people can make do with less than that. Some people cannot. It's something to experiment with and find the optimum for yourself. If you sleep too little, then you find yourself falling asleep all the time in the meditation hall, and then it's better to take a little more rest. The body is telling you it's not getting enough rest. If you sleep too much, then you get dull, irritable, distracted. The mind doesn't want to be concentrated. So finding the right amount of sleep. In the suttas, the classic exhortation is to put forth effort in the first and third watch of the night. The day is divided into watches or 4-hour periods, and so the night is divided into 3 4-hour periods. 6 to 10 p.m. is the first watch, 10 to 2 a.m. is the second watch, and 2 to 6 is the third watch. And so Buddha encouraged monks to be sitting and walking in the first and third watch of the night, and 10 till 2 is the appropriate time for rest. And perhaps, as I was saying, some people may need more than that, but something to find for yourself. So these are some of the supportive conditions. Having found an appropriate environment, then being one who is content, easily satisfied, someone who's puts effort into sense restraint, someone who is moderate in the taking of food, someone who takes joy in wakefulness and doesn't take joy in sleep and unconsciousness. And another factor that is of extreme importance, perhaps in some ways may say paramount importance. There must be a sense of wholesome desire. You must really want to develop samadhi, and in certain cases we may say, well, the very fact that all of us are here tonight is because we want to develop samadhi. But in fact, I think our attitudes towards it can vary from day to day, or from month to month, or over different time periods. But the devotion to mental cultivation, development, the inspiration with it, the desire to do it, is a sankhara. It's a condition, one which we can uphold, and one which we can encourage. And the distinction and discrimination of desire into as being of two major kinds is an important recollection here, that craving based on ignorance of the way things are, expressed as desire for Vedana, desire for pleasant feeling, experienced through the senses, or desire bound up with the sense of self, to be, to become, to be someone, to be loved, respected, admired, or desire to not to be, to disappear, to get rid of things. All these kinds of desires are called tanha, and they are the second noble truth of called samudaya, things to be abandoned. But the desire, aspiration based on knowledge, wisdom, understanding, a desire which is not aimed at or focused on the enjoyment of feeling, but desire focused on development of goodness, noble qualities, realization of truth. This is not something to be abandoned, quite the contrary. This is something to be assiduously developed, because it's a wonderful quality to have in your mind, and it's developed by seeing the drawbacks, what we call the tot, the suffering inherent in the lack of peace and concentration, how miserable life can be, especially as a monastic, if your mind is very confused, distracted, full of hindrances. You can feel very ashamed and unworthy of the offerings of the lay people, and it feels bad. And I don't think that it's extremely rare for any monk who has developed good samadhi to disrobe, or even to consider disrobing. So the whole debate on why monks disrobe, or why particular monks disrobe, is one which we're all familiar with. But certainly, I think one important factor here is that the monks in question have not developed that samadhi as a refuge, and they don't have the ability to let go. They don't have the strength of mind, the integrity of mind, to be able to let go of unwholesome thoughts. So the joy, the rapture, the contentment, inner brightness, lucidity of mind, which accompanies the development of meditation, is one which fills the meditator with great faith in the path and the fruit, and thoughts of abandoning the training are very unlikely to arise in such a mind. So it's a great refuge to a monk or a monastic. So for yourself, try and find particular examples from your own life or from those around you to see the detrimental effects of neglecting samadhi practice, or the lack of samadhi practice. If we look at particularly at people who've developed very serious illnesses, experiencing great deal of dukkha vedana, can see straight away the anisong, the benefits of samadhi, and the ability to cope with racking, piercing feelings that arise from illnesses such as cancer. And if it's not developed, that kind of peace of mind doesn't develop a vihara, Dhamma, a place of refuge within, then we may ask ourselves, well, if we were to develop such an illness, could we cope with it? Could we deal with it? And this is a way of spurring on the mind. As a complement to the reflection on the disadvantages, the drawbacks of the lack of concentration in the mind, the fact that one is one more point here, that of course that one is in fact barred from all hope of enlightenment, because it's only through development of samadhi that we have the base for vipassana wisdom to arise. So it's absolutely essential in our quest for truth and enlightenment. So as a complement accompanying that reflection on the disadvantages of lack of samadhi, then we contemplate the advantages of samadhi, advantages of peaceful mind, and we may consciously bring up experiences from our own practice, although we may not feel that our practice is anything to shout about or anything so wonderful. I'm sure that all of us have experienced periods of calm or relative calm in which we've been full of faith with the whole practice of meditation and been really fired up by that, and to consciously bring up those memories, not to fall into that trap of trying somehow to relive those experiences again, but to remind ourselves of the wonder of the concentrated mind. I was just sent a book yesterday with the latest collection of talks by Ajahn Jayasaro, and it's called the Wonder and the Mystery of the Mind. It's a lovely title. And so we start to meditate, and we see that the mental universe that most people inhabit is such a constricted, poverty-stricken environment, and that it's as if people are, shut into a tiny room on a most beautiful national park full of the most wonderful flora and fauna, and just stuck in this sort of concrete shed with the doors and the windows closed. And how much there is to see and to experience, and how wonderful, mysterious the mind is. Seeing the beneficial effects of samadhi on our lives, the calming effects, the clarifying effects, notice, observe, after you've been meditating for a while, or putting effort into meditation practice, just how naturally and spontaneously virtuous or wholesome dhammas arise in the mind, thoughts of kindness, thoughts of compassion, the intention to perform some thoughtful deed for other people, other beings. All kinds of noble, beautiful qualities blossom naturally, spontaneously, as the chatter, the internal dialogue, starts to quieten down. And notice this, observe this. And and remind yourself that whatever results that you have had from meditation, as I say, even if they're not particularly spectacular, they are pointing to your capacity for peace, and this is extremely important to keep reminding yourself, not to get discouraged. And that can be taken further. We do have the capacity to purify the mind, to calm the mind of its habitual worries and anxieties and fantasies and projections. This is something that we need to have a strong faith and confidence in, and one based on our reading of the suttas and the teachings of the great masters, but also from our own experience, to see that we have to a certain extent developed peace. That success, what little success, or whether it's a great success, is pointing to a fundamental capacity or gift, which we merely need to expand or build upon. It is not beyond our capabilities. So we also incline our minds towards the great teachers, those monks who've developed very strong samadhi, developed jhanas, and think how wonderful it would be if I could realize that kind of peace of mind, how wonderful it would be if I could develop that kind of samadhi. And from that initial thought, how wonderful it would be, then we develop that one to be, yes, I will, I shall, I must develop those qualities. It's leading the mind onwards, inclining the mind onwards to emulate the great masters. And remember, I was remembering the other day when I went to pay respects to the coffin, the body of Lumpur Put, who was one of the great meditation masters of the last 50 years or so, and the time that he came to visit Ajahn Chah while I was nursing Ajahn Chah. Ajahn Chah was at that time paralyzed and spending most of the time with his eyes closed, and Lumpur Put asked for permission to come and just stand by the side of his bed and and just concentrate his mind and to use his samadhi power to find out where Ajahn Chah was and what Ajahn Chah was doing with his mind. And after he emerged from the room, I asked him, and he said, Ajahn Chah's mind is like the full moon in an empty sky. It wasn't said in a kind of self-consciously poetic way, but it was just this completely natural, down-to-earth recounting of his experience of Ajahn Chah's mind. Anybody who didn't know Ajahn Chah would look into a window and see Ajahn Chah lying on a bed like a vegetable, but his mind was like the full moon and empty sky. So even with such physical disabilities, the power of his samadhi was so strong that he was able to dwell in extremely blissful realms. And this is the example of our teacher, and we can read in the suttas and the biographies of great monks and the experiences of monks in the Sangha today of everyone who's developed this samadhi says, This is such a wonderful thing to develop, and it's not beyond your capabilities to develop it. So finding this skillful means to bring up this great desire, wish, aspiration to develop samadhi. This is the job, the task, the livelihood of a samana. Samana means the peaceful one. How can we develop this peace expressed in our actions, in our speech, but most importantly in our mind, our mental processes. So turning away from distraction, turning away from the world of thought and imagination, as thoughts, memories, perceptions, and so on, muscle their way into the mind, and we don't have to fight with them, but it's like like a door-to-door salesman comes and knocks on your door, wants to sell you something. You don't have to knock them out or kick them, and just say no thank you, and close the door politely, and got something more useful to do, and a more useful way to spend your wealth than on what door-to-door salesmen have to give you. So thoughts, no matter how interesting they are and how creative they may be, ultimately they don't lead anywhere. Well, they do. They lead round in a circle, and you can go round and round and round in circles without ever stopping. And we believe that that's exactly what we've been doing for the past countless lifetimes. So you've been thinking and imagining and remembering and fantasizing for millions upon millions upon millions of lifetimes already, and ask yourself, where's it got you? Is there any thought? Is there any of imagination that is a real refuge to you, that you could turn to? Times, both the periods of bliss and the periods of despair, something which is always there as a refuge for you? No, there isn't. It's only through being willing to abandon, renounce that delight in thought that we can realize the realm beyond thought, that transcends thought. And that's the wonderful and the mysterious, profound realm that Luntha Mahabua is referring to. So work with developing this right view and right attitude to defilements, keeping the mindfulness sharp, sampajanya, that kind of alertness to the arising of defilements, alertness to rising of distraction, alertness to the dullness and increasing stiffness of mind, and taking appropriate remedies. If the mind becoming dull, stiff, it's starting to shrink and darken, then turn the mind to the perception of light, or consciously bring up inspiring topics, the virtues of Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha, for instance, or virtuous deeds that you've performed in the past, the various anusati meditations. If the mind's distracted, then putting more and more effort on this simple calming object of the mind. With verbal thoughts, a very useful technique is to imagine the verbal thought as words written on water. So if you have a thought like I am bored, for instance, and just imagine this writing I am bored on water, and just as you write on water, it just kind of dissolves. And this is a way, one way, one skillful means of dealing with discursive thought. Imagine it as writing on water. As you breathe out, just imagine all the thoughts and distractions leaving the mind and heart, together with the exhalation, breathing in, imagining inhaling peace and calm and joy and rapture. So there's a lot of room for creativity and experimentation around the basic meditation techniques that we're using, particularly the mindfulness of breathing practice, but developing, giving thought to the supports for meditation and the right attitude or right view towards meditation, and this will be setting the mind up correctly. This is giving you the platform for success in the practice of meditation. So these are a few thoughts I'd like to share with you this evening.